It's about time they got a program like Cops and Kids.
And New York residents have a lot to say about it. Reporter Davina Jakova has the story.
On today's show, protests rock the city of New York. We meet a Bronx man fighting to bring an end to police brutality. The Museum of Natural History opens a new exhibit on natural disasters. A group of students supports their teacher in the New York City Marathon. Comedians tell us what it takes to craft a joke.
Hello and welcome to the CUNY News Update. I'm Rose Iskovitz.
And I'm Michaela Ross.
Last week, a New York City grand jury decided not to indict the officer accused of the chokehold of the death of Eric Garner. Since then, police brutality protests have rocked the city. Some groups are seizing the moment to take a stand for other issues. Paul Lyotta has the story.
A group of CUNY hunters, students, and faculty gathered to protest the choking death of Eric Garner. The group embraces socialism and sees capitalism as the cause of Garner's death.
You who are students, you should know better. You come to learn history and to make sure it doesn't repeat itself. That's right. So what is it? It's class, it's wealth, it's the economy.
One professor said why they came out to protest.
Students are fed up with racism. Students are fed up with police brutality and murders by the police, and students are organizing to put an end to it. We're seeing some of that here today. It's very important.
Not everyone in attendance at the protest agreed with what the students were saying.
Misery, and it's misery. I live it. I study medicine over there. That was misery for everybody. Capitalism is the best system.
One student said he would tell Dominic Pantaleo, the officer who killed Garner, to focus on the real criminals on Wall Street.
I tell him that he's, he took away Eric Garner's life over a loose cigarette. Meanwhile, that there are people in Wall Street who are looting every day. Wells Fargo was indicted for laundering money. They got away with it. So if he went on the force to stop crime, to stop people like Eric Garner from selling loose cigarettes, he's in the wrong business.
At the end of the demonstration at Hunter, the students gathered to march toward Herald Square, where protests continued. Thank you. This has been Paul Lyotta.
That was Paul Lyotta reporting. After a series of police brutality incidents nationwide, some New Yorkers say the NYPD needs to be monitored. In the Bronx, one man is single-handedly serving the role of a police watchdog for his community. Ken Aragaki reports.
Jose Lasal and his crews patrol Bronx neighborhoods almost every day, with video cameras in hand. But they are not looking for thieves or robbers. They are here to record misconduct by NYPD police officers. LaSalle founded Cop Watch Patrol Unit in 2011 after his 16-year-old stepson, Alvin, was assaulted by NYPD officers. LaSalle says the recent case of Eric Garner is a good example of why people do not trust police.
The people do not want more police in this community. People really want a lot of these police to go. They don't want these police patrolling, these areas where they live, because they're being harassed more by police than they are by the kids or any other young man in the neighborhood.
These Bronx residents agree.
The only thing I would ever do concerning police is if I was having a heart attack, if I was poisoned, if I had an accident.
There were some positive accounts that the police have handled things appropriately, but I've heard quite a few negative.
LaSalle's watchdog group now has about 30 volunteers and branches in East and West Harlem and Far Rockaway, in addition to the Bronx.
They don't want these police patrolling, these areas where they live, because they're being harassed more by police than they are by the kids or any other young man in the neighborhood.
LaSalle says he's a victim of police brutality too. In September, he was taking his dog for a walk after midnight in the West Bronx when a police officer beamed a flashlight at him. LaSalle took out his smartphone to film the officer and asked for his badge number. He says that's when the officer and his colleagues attacked and arrested LaSalle.
So they grabbed me over there, they dragged me all the way over here, So they end up putting my arm, they push it all the way back, and then they slam me into the gate. Boom.
In October, LaSalle sued the officers who arrested him and is waiting for a court hearing. He says this type of assault by police officer is not uncommon in his neighborhood. Police even have a special name for it.
So these officers tune up people that they feel, are people that they feel that they want to send a message to.
The Civilian Complaint Review Board, an independent police oversight agency, has received over 13,000 allegations of police misconduct in New York City between January and October of this year, an almost 8% increase over the same period last year.
The areas that are most affected by the NYPD's misconduct are in poor minority areas such as the South Bronx or Bedford-Stuyvesant.
John Kleinig is a professor emeritus of police behavior at John Jay College.
Police are taught to respond to situations in ways that are not very understanding. For example, that they should come on strong, take control of a situation, never back down. Things of that kind lead to an overreaction, often to questioning.
Kleinig says the mistrust of NYPD officers is highest among the poor and minorities. A day after the grand jury decided not to indict the police officer responsible for Eric Garner's death, New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio and NYPD Commissioner Bill Bratton has announced they will focus on retraining of police to improve its relationship with the community.
It's a fulfillment of a commitment that I made coming in as commissioner and that the mayor embraced wholeheartedly. The need to refocus the department and to refocus it requires training and the enhancement of skills that are so necessary to reach the commitment that we make to the community.
But LaSalle says the police need to do more to regain people's trust.
So they need to change their character, they need to change their actions and the way they're implementing the law in the community, and maybe then people will start looking at them as, as back in the days we looked at them as heroes.
While LaSalle continues his daily patrolling, more New Yorkers continue to come out and join protests against police brutality. This is Ken Aragaki from the Bronx.
Coming up next, the Museum of Natural History explores the impact of natural disasters and the city. Bronx students cheer on their teacher. What's in a joke? A comedian shows us the mechanics of joke writing.
My name's Reggie. Just recently, my wife and I took in her sister's children. And we already had 4, so I went from becoming a family man to a man with a bigger family. Now, you can't eat love, so I don't know how I'm gonna feed them tonight. How was that, Rich?
I think I look more like Denzel.
That's cold, man.
Play a role in ending hunger. Visit feedingamerica.org/hunger and find your local food bank.
Welcome back. A new exhibit at the American Museum of Natural History explores the science behind natural disasters. Natasha Madov has the details.
Imagine if you could get close to a tornado without getting wet. Or if you could learn how earthquakes are formed and how they are detected by jumping on the ground. Or if you could create your own volcano. Nature's Fury, a new special exhibition at the American Museum of Natural History, is teaching the science of natural disasters and their impact on human lives.
Sometimes it becomes a stronger story.
Stephen Ruff, senior manager for the museum, explains why the subject is so important now.
Even though natural disasters have occurred for as long as recorded history and before that, we're feeling the effects of it more because we see the images more. We understand the human tragedy much more so than we did before.
One of the most popular parts of the exhibit is the multimedia table that shows how Hurricane Sandy affected New York. Ruff explains how it works.
The rainfall, the winds, the clouds that rolled in when the hurricane hit in October of 2012. And what this shows are flood zones on areas that are most affected, that are lowest level to the water, including Staten Island, Brooklyn, Lower Manhattan, Queens, the Bronx. Everywhere was affected by Sandy in some degree, but the storm was so severe that nothing like it had ever occurred before. It was the storm of the century is what they called, and these are the areas that were deeply affected that were still recovering.
The exhibition opened only a few weeks ago, but it's already a hit with the museum's visitors.
It was very interesting to see some of the different aspects of all the different types of huge natural disasters.
Nature's Fury at the Natural History Museum will be open until next summer. From New York, this is Natasha Madov.
At this year's New York City Marathon, I followed a group of high school seniors who volunteered at the Mile 20 water station. They were part of a school-wide effort to cheer on their teacher. Here's what happened.
In the days before the New York City Marathon, it's not just the runners who are excited.
What I'm looking forward to at the TCS New York City Marathon is to see people from all over New York City and all over America to come for a momentous occasion.
Born in the Philippines, 12th grader John Mark Flores thinks it's a privilege to live in New York City and run the marathon. This year, he will be a volunteer.
I think the marathon is a good way to promote and develop a New York City spirit and to develop pride within your city.
And when he volunteers at the race, he will know one runner very well, his teacher, marathon runner Caroline Cobb.
And I thought it would be a really great opportunity for our kids to see something that is such a big part of their city that so many of them might have never been exposed to, and to really see how a really long commitment, a long-term commitment like training for a marathon, can pay off in such a big way for so many people.
As part of the school's Fall Senior Service Day, about 90 students are handing out bananas and water at the 20-mile fluid station in the Bronx.
If you hand someone water and 20 miles into a marathon, they're pretty happy about it.
Even the 31-mile-an-hour winds and 45-degree temperatures can't dampen students' excitement on race day.
Well, I got here very early, but it's been very fun.
It's so excited. It's just so amazing, and we're just cheering on until they get to the finish line.
Yeah, I've been inspired because I've seen paraplegics, people in wheelchairs running, disabled people of all shapes and sizes.
Especially exciting was having their own teacher running the 26.2-mile race.
When I see my teacher, I'm probably going to scream and fist pump.
I love you.
Oh, I'm gonna be so hyped. I have posters for her. I'm so excited to see her. I'm gonna belt. I'm just gonna yell Miss Cobb.
And that's exactly what they did. She's easy to miss. Did you see Caroline with her arms up? Now John says his goal is to run a marathon one day. This year, he watched his teacher do it in 3 hours and 35 minutes. In New York, Michaela Ross.
Wow, Michaela, that must have been so much fun to be at the marathon.
It was a lot of fun to interview all those students. It was a bit cold that day, but all the students were great.
I can only imagine.
Yes, and speaking of fun, have you ever thought how much time and effort it takes to craft a great joke? In this feature piece, Maya Dangerfield shows us the creative process behind good comedy.
Less than a minute later, she posts another one. It was basically the same angle. And it was hashtag, I'm over the moon about my son. Really, bitch? Are you Neil fucking Armstrong? The first time I did stand-up, I think so, it was pretty nerve-wracking. And I love an audience, I'll tell you. First thing I learned is that OkCupid should really rename itself Privileged White Bros and Their Vacation Photos of Machu Picchu. And you're just up there and your mind kind of just takes over. I worked as a paralegal for 5 years in Boston. The joke I'm working on now is it's about LinkedIn, I guess it's business networking. I've noticed people keep endorsing me for stuff, and there's no possible way they could know that I know how to do these things. These people are endorsing me for skills like civil litigation and legal research. I mean, there's absolutely no way that they know that I know how to do those things, so it's just really weird. This one, for example, I've been thinking about this for probably 6 months, and I'm like, oh, I want to write a joke about that, and I feel like people would get it because there's so many people on LinkedIn
But just now I've kind of been like, okay, I'm gonna just make myself try to write something out, even if I don't know where it's gonna take me. It's not as many one-liners, so I'll write more, and then I have to condense it to find like the funniest parts of it.
Really, the only civil litigation I did was I would like argue the merits of like Miller Lite versus Bud Light. You know, and like the only legal research I was doing was like I would like research like the firm's like fraternization policies because there were a lot of hot attorneys in that office.
If I'm like chuckling to myself at something, then I'm like, ooh, maybe there'll be some other chucklers in the audience, and so then I focus on that. Being terrified of clowns. Ooh, I'm actually good at like researching serial killers. That's kind of a weird thing. The next time I perform it, which will be in a few days, you know, it probably won't even be there yet then because that'll be my first time performing it in front of people. But my thing now is like do more open mics because I felt recently I hadn't been getting on stage enough. I've been doing the bringer shows and those are great, but you kind of like tap out all of your friends because, you know, it's like every week it's like, come to my show, and they're like, I've already heard those shitty jokes. Like, so it's kind of like go to the open mics and network with people, meet new people, and just try to get on stage as much as possible.
I think you need to take stuff out of your life and use it on stage because people relate to that, and Amanda has a great way of picking stuff out of her life and using it on stage and making it funny.
The joke hits, it's just, you're just like, oh yeah, these people get me. We are on the same wavelength. And they're laughing, obviously, hopefully.
But I think what they could do to be a little bit more like Facebook is they could like broaden their horizons on that whole endorsing people for skills. Because right now it's like it has to be something like business related. And I would really like a site where people could endorse me for shit that I'm actually good at, you know? Like being terrified of clowns. I am so good at that, you guys. Or, you know, like 5 a.m. walks of shame, expert right here. I'm like a fucking ghost the next day. You don't even know I was there.
That's it for this edition of CUNY News Update. I'm Michaela Ross.
And I'm Rose Zitzkowitz. Have a good night, everyone.